One of the most controversial areas in the study of the Old Testament these days for Christians comes out primarily of the book of Joshua, which depicts God as a warrior and also describes God as commanding Israel to destroy the Canaanites. And Christian readers who are more familiar with the New Testament think that this is in contradiction or significant tension with Jesus' command to love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and so forth. And so often people think that there's some kind of divide between the Old and New Testament. Now, in our introduction, we deal with this issue in the approaching the New Testament section, where we point out that though on the surface it looks like there's a contradiction here, that really the Bible presents us with one coherent account of God's battle against evil. There is a significant transition when Jesus comes, and what happens actually is that he intensifies and heightens the battle against evil by saying that we shouldn't take up sword and spear against flesh and blood enemies, but that we should use spiritual weapons. And of course, Paul also underlines this in a place like Ephesians 6:10 and following. That is that we should take up spiritual weapons against spiritual enemies, the powers and principalities. However, if you read the book of Revelation and the other apocalyptic portions of the New Testament, you see that the Old Testament warfare and the New Testament warfare, and let's remember that neither Jesus nor Paul disowns the Old Testament. They understand that this is all part of God's battle against evil. But the book of Revelation and the other apocalyptic portions of the New Testament envision what we would call the final judgment, where Jesus, in Revelation 19:11 and following, is described as coming out on a white horse with a sword coming out of his mouth and doing final battle against all spiritual and human evil. And so here's an example where in our introduction we try to make sense of what seems to be a tension or a contradiction between the Old and New Testaments.